Wade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, part 2 and the conclusion of the Lanyard Knife Sheath for the fixed blade 3-inch knife with the hair-on cowhide insert. So we're gonna go ahead and do the stitching holes today, but we're using a drill press. So we're going through 4 thicknesses of leather here. So instead of trying to punch through everything, I'm gonna go ahead and drill my stitching holes. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, so in part 1 we were looking at the top piece that we had cut out like this, and I got studying that, and I said something about putting a cross piece here, and I got looking at it and it just didn't look right to me. So I went ahead and did another piece with that top cross piece in there, and I think it looks so much better that way. Than this way. So again, I said it was part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, go back, check that out, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I've got my drill press set up with a block of wood, and I'm going to go ahead and drill all my stitching holes through the top piece, the hair-on cowhide piece, then the top piece of the knife sheath that'll touch the blade. Then it's got to go through the back piece that's going to hold the lanyard. So I've got 4 thicknesses of leather that this is going to go through, and really I've already grooved the front piece and then went ahead and punched my stitching holes with a stitching punch. That way I know exactly how far away all my holes need to be. So that's going to be my guide as I go ahead and stitch these holes, or drill the holes for my stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this down flat on my piece of wood here, and all this is just a pine 1x4, real soft wood. I'm going to line that up, make sure everything's lined up with the bottom piece, then go ahead and line up my top piece on top of the hair-on cowhide and the bottom, because the first hole that I drill is going to be key, and that's going to be my anchor. So I've got to get that, and that's why I'll move this light around on my drill press. I've got to get that first hole perfect. So I've already set my depth where it just barely goes into the piece of wood. So I'll turn on my drill press. What I'll do to get that first hole anchored in there perfect is I'll keep bringing that down until I find that first hole in that top piece, and I'll just move that piece of wood and that'll move everything with it. So once I get that first hole anchored, I'll go ahead and drill all the way through all 4 pieces. Then I'll turn that off. And what I can do is I can move that off of my drill press, and I can take, I have a stitching punch that has 1 prong on it, and I can put that through that hole and tap it in, and flip that over and make sure that that's going all the way through all 4 pieces in the same spot, because that's going to be my anchor. That's where everything is going through. So that's going to be my starting point, and I can drill all my holes from there as that's anchored down. So I can go ahead and put it back up on my drill press, and then I can get this set where I can use this backbone of my drill press with the wood up against it. So what that does is that makes it nice and sturdy. And at this point I'll stand up so I can see exactly what I'm doing, and I can go ahead and move this using this backbone as an anchor and start drilling those holes. And it doesn't really matter where I start because I've got that anchor point in that corner, as long as I follow the punched holes that I already have in that top piece. go across the top. Let me turn this off. I'm getting ready to go across the top. Now, I don't need to stitch all the way through to the back, or I won't be able to get my knife in the sheath. So I just need to stitch into the top 3 layers across the top part. So I'll pull the back part off, set it aside, and then I can go ahead and put this back on, and I'll pull that out now that I have everything lined up and stitched, or drilled, sorry, and I can go across the top part. Now I'm just going through the top 3 layers that'll stitch separately. And that's what will create my opening for the actual knife blade. Got them drilled all the way across the top, just on these 3 pieces, not the bottom piece. Then I need to finish the top 4 holes on the other side where I took out the stitching punch. Again, I'm holding that down, trying not to let that slide around and move, keep it as straight as possible. If I was doing this on all straight leather, I would just go ahead and contact cement everything before I drilled it. But since I have some hair on cowhide, that makes it a little impossible, because that's not going to work with contact cement because of the hair. So it does throw a wrench in it a little bit. But you can see on the back, all the holes have been drilled through. That's just a little bit of wood that came out of the chunk of wood that I did on the back. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and stitch across the top with these 3 pieces. Then I'll put the back on after I stitch across. Then I'll start doing all 4 pieces together. So I'm going to stitch all this. You've seen plenty of stitching videos that I've done, or go back and take a look at some of them. I'll do a saddle stitch on this, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I'm going to finish the lanyard part. Alright, so I've got this stitched, and again I just did a saddle stitch by hand all the way around. I stitched across here. just on the top 3 layers, and then as I got to the corner, then I started stitching all the way through all 4 layers, and got a nice snug fit, so it's not going to fall out, but yet you can grab a hold of the sheath and pull the knife out, no problem. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the lanyard on there, and I've got a piece of white to kind of go along with the white in the hair on cowhide, so kind of a little accent color. And I'm going to fold this over at the top. I left some extra at the top so that I can fold it over, put my lanyard through there, and then I'm going to punch that and put a couple of silver rivets in there. So that looks like plenty of space for my lanyard to go through. I can pull that tight. Let me flip that around so you can see what's going on. I can pull that snug, and then I can flip this over so that I can see exactly how much room I have to put my rivets in there. So I'll grab my punch, and I'll put 2 in it, and I'll just equally space them apart. I want to make sure I go all the way through, and I'm using a poly cutting board to do this on. So I'll open that up, and then I'll go all the way through the back side. Set my punch aside, and I get into my hardware, and I'm using 5/16 rivets. Because this is approximately 6-ounce leather, and I'll get my anvil and my rivet setter, and I'm going to put them through the front and put the cap on the back. So I'm going to put my rivet through the front, put my cap on the back part. Notice I have my lanyard through there straight as possible. I'll put my rivet on my anvil on the front part, put my setter on the back, and I like to normally give it 3 good whacks. And that's just a personal preference again. That's just what I've found works good for me. And I'll put the second rivet in, put the cap on, get my setter ready, give it 3 good whacks, and then there's my rivets holding my lanyard on. Now, the last thing that I need to do is pull my lanyard down to where it's even from the top, through the sheath, and then I'll tie a knot in the top of the lanyard, and I'll pull that down nice and tight. I want it as snug as I can possibly get it. And then let me zoom out a little bit so we can see what's going on here. So I've got my sheath. I made my loop for my lanyard. There's the lanyard, the 3-inch fixed blade knife. Slide it into the sheath. There's another completed project, part 2, the Lanyard Knife Sheath. It's got the hair-on cowhide, the nice carry sheath for a 3-inch fixed blade. Again, it fits in there nice and snug. It's not too tight, but at least it's not going to fall out when you're hiking or camping and you're carrying it around as a lanyard. So, turned out nice. Again, this lady asked me if I could make a knife sheath for her camping knife that would go around her neck. So I thought I'd go ahead and make her one and do the add a little accent with the hair on cowhide, and again the accent lanyard to the white in the cowhide. So I think it turned out great. I'm glad I decided to do the cross piece at the top. I think it makes it look so much nicer, and it also makes it stronger. So appreciate you coming along for this project. Please, if you haven't, check out part 1 and come back next week and we'll be starting a new project. So appreciate it. As I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.